Hello, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. This is Tosca Di Matteo, founder of Tosca Coaching and Consulting, and you are in Talk About It Tuesday with myself and Cindy Tsai, and we are going to talk about permission to decondition. Hello, hello. Good to see you here, Meeting Your Magic, aka Kiara. This is a great topic. I am so excited for you to meet Cindy. She is an MD, a physician, a life coach, a speaker, and she has just an amazing message for us all about really honoring who we are and showing up and having the courage to be our true self. So I'm just super excited to have her on. And for those of you who are new to Talk About It Tuesday, I bring different voices, experiences, and perspectives to the table in order to support you in being the best leader you can, living your best life, and on the journey of healing. And so here is Cindy. I'm going to bring her on right now. Yeah. Hello, Cindy.
Hi there, how's it going?
Good. How are you today?
I'm good. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're looking
Okay,
good.
perfect.
I'm so excited. I also have Kiara on from Meeting Your Magic. We actually talked about deconditioning because she does human design work. And so this is I have two experts on the line here.
I love it.
Yeah, but I just, first and foremost, I just want to say thank you so much for making the time to be on this platform, to share your story and your wisdom with people. I think what we're talking about today is just everything. Um, and, without further ado, I just want to hand it over to you to introduce yourself, to share what you want to share about your life experiences and kind of what brings you here today. What made you who you are, and just to get a grounding of who you are for all of those who are joining now and after the fact who may not know.
Thank you for the introduction. So, hi everyone, I'm Dr. Cindy Sai, and I am a board certified internal medicine physician, a mindfulness teacher, a speaker, and a life coach. And I love empowering busy, high achieving women to reconnect to who they are, to build that sense of confidence so that they can feel well and live their best life with ease and joy. And, for me, I'm sure we'll get into this as we continue our conversation, but I was practicing primary care for several years, and I realized that I wasn't fully satisfied. And I had done all the things, checked all the boxes, and got to a point in my life where I was thinking that this was what it was going to be like. And it was hard to acknowledge that, my reality wasn't really matching up to my vision. And I was feeling really stuck and unhappy. And for me, I'm grateful to have been able to connect with different people, and I sought help. And I found coaching. And through coaching, I really learned so many tools and skills to transform my mindset and perspective, and really allowed me to get out of that place of unhappiness, resentment, and feeling stuck. And so I really see coaching as a way to go beyond your circumstances, your situations, right? You learn all the tools and skills so that you can be empowered and really live your best life.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing your thoughts on coaching. I mean, there's just not enough people, I think, leveraging coaching and how that can change your life. But I want to take a step back because there's a huge, I think, aspect of the amount of schooling that you did and like just your journey to get to be an MD and then to like say, wait a minute, I feel stuck and I'm not happy. So I'd love to just, you know, take a step back in terms of, you know, what drove you to become an MD and what, you know, what was part, because we talked about this, you know, in our pre-call, like what was part of like your cultural experience and expectations that may have played a role in that? Because I think so many can identify with your journey, and I just love to hear more about what, you know, leading up to the stuckness, you know.
Yeah, I'm happy to share. So I grew up in Taiwan. I went to an American school. And so my parents, I'm the youngest of four daughters. And there's a big age gap between me and my sisters. And growing up, I actually kept telling myself this story that I was unwanted and that I was an accident because my parents didn't plan to have me. And I think what came about that was it made me feel like I had to be a perfectionist. I had to do all the right things in order to be accepted and liked. And my family, I would say, my dad was a surgeon. So I think we were pretty traditional in terms of Chinese cultural values and things like that. So really, parents really emphasized education and, you know, accomplishments. And so I think for me, just from a young age, I was very driven, and I was interested in health and wellness, and I wanted to help people. And being exposed to medicine from a young age, I was like, well, being a doctor makes sense. And so I kind of went down that path, science, all the things. It fortunately came very easy. And so I was just very focused on becoming a doctor. And I went to all the top schools. I went to Johns Hopkins. I went to Dartmouth for med school, and then just went straight through and did training in internal medicine. And I think that I was so focused on becoming a doctor that I never really paused to question, you know, what is it that I really want, and what really makes me happy, right? And I think somewhere along the way, there was a part of me that was like wanting to become a doctor, also to make my family, make my parents proud. You know, it's a respectable career profession. And then I think I really lost sight of who I was and what I really wanted, what brought me joy. And, you know, but I just kept going. And I think that a lot of times when you're in these types of environments, you know, schools where so many other people, I remember in college at Hopkins, like there were so many pre-meds, right? Everyone was pre-med when you first started. And you kind of, you know, your environment shapes you also, right? And I think it takes a lot to actually really notice and be open to something else. And so I think for me, just I think accumulating all these years of like maybe being driven by external things, right? Like accolades, achievements, other people's expectations, not wanting to let others down. It really, I think, over time, what happened was it built up this unhappiness and resentment inside me. And it took some time for me to finally own up to it and to finally do something about it. And I think that that was definitely, you know, a very important part of my healing journey, and why I share my story, because I know so many women, especially, I think, just are so giving and take care of everyone, everything else, you know, put ourselves last. And I really hope to share that, you know, it's okay to listen to yourself. It's okay to be who you are, right? And it's the only way, right? Because then you actually show up as who you're meant to be in this world.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, because, what I'm pulling out too was like that, your environment shapes you, like that really stuck out. And the idea of like, and I don't know if it was this way for you, but like when a roadmap is laid out for you, that's like the path of least resistance. It's just kind of like, doctor, go. And it's very, easy in a way. You go to these schools, you do these things. So in retrospect, was there comfort in the roadmap? Like, did you ever question it early on, or not even really, because it was just never a thing to ask? Like, or were there whispers along the way? Because it sounded like the resentment and unhappiness built. It wasn't like just one moment, 2 years into your practice, you were like, oh my God, I'm not happy. It sounds like you maybe got some whispers. I'd love to hear more about maybe how that came to you, because I think we ignore our own intuition along the way, and then we get into these places where it's like, oh shit, I gotta really unravel some things. So.
Yeah, I appreciate the question, because I think definitely along the way there were whispers, right? And I think that as I continued on my journey and really, I would say, kind of really examined deeper in terms of who I really am, that's when the whispers become louder and clearer, right? I think in the beginning, especially when you're younger, when you have all these external influences and beliefs and like cultural expectations and the media, like all of these things that have been kind of like almost like laid on you that you've accepted as the default, right? It's hard to sift through the noise, absolutely. And you're kind of like, well, is this really good for me? Is this my intuition, or is this just fear, right? Should I just like keep going? Like everyone says it's good and all these things, right? And I think that, my going through the medical training process, like it's not something that just happens, right? Like,
yeah, no, that's the fate of art. You gotta actually,
yeah, like you have to do all the extracurriculars. You have to take a bunch of tests. You have to study super hard. You like apply and do a ton of interviews, right? You don't just like get this, big acceptance envelope to be like, hey, welcome, like come on in. So I think that along the way, every step when I had to make a decision of, like, okay, do I want to take the MCAT? Do I want to apply to med school? Do I want to, like do all these applications and all the things, right? I think at every step, it was this fork, right, in the road to be like, hey, this is an opportunity to choose, to make a decision. And I definitely had moments where I would be like, is this really what I want to do? But I think what was hard was the fact that at the farther you go down that path, you look backwards and you're like, oh my gosh, I already put in so many years, right? And I think that in and of itself was a motivator for me to keep going, because I was like, honestly, I mean, it is a total privilege to be a physician, and it's still very much part of my identity, and I want to serve in different ways. But I think that definitely, especially as I was going through med school, when you start med school, they say it's like drinking water from a fire hydrant, because there's like so much information coming at you. And I remember my first week of school sitting in lecture, just nonstop, and suddenly having this thought of being like, what am I doing? Am I really wanting to do this? And then I remember calling my sister to be like, oh my gosh, this is a lot of stuff to do. And she was very supportive. She was like, well, what else do you want to do? And I think that even though that question had come up before from time to time, I never really gave myself permission to explore and to be open to it. And so I think my default was just to be like, oh, well, let me just complain and then like keep going, right?
Yeah.
So I think so often, it's this idea that like just do it, right? Like keep going, hustle, and like it's going to be fine, right? And I think there's some, you do need that kind of energy to get through especially challenging times. But I think that it's only good up until a certain point, because I know as a physician I saw so many patients come in when they were in burnout and exhaustion. And that's what happens when you don't actually pause and listen and notice, like pay attention to all the signs and and all the whispers and all these things. So that's what I really hope to really share with people, that you don't have to wait until that point, right? You can take care of yourself now. And it's very, very important that you do.
Yes. And what you're saying makes me think of, I think it was like Angela Duckworth and Brene Brown. They were having a conversation about the difference between grit and grind, right? Because I think part of what you're saying, right, is like, oh, like there's hard things and you grind through it versus like stepping back, because grit is kind of more, and I'm totally gonna botch this, so like I'm just gonna say it now, but like grit meaning like it's more intrinsic, like you're doing it, like you're going through it because it's what you want, and it's versus grind is like you're doing it for somebody else, you're not really doing it for you, right?
Yeah.
And so there's that, right, which is identifying the difference of what you're in, to be aware of like am I hating this because it's hard, or am I hating it because like it's actually not what I want to do?
Yeah.
um and then the other piece is this this needing to decondition from this idea of, oh my god, I've already put X into something, right? It's the
Mm-hmm.
same, it's like sunk costs, right, in the financial world, right? So you've already spent it, so why should that be what we use to decide what we want going forward? um and I think that because you had so much in it, right? You had time, effort, financial, all the stuff. Not to mention, like, I'm sure associated with MD, like the ego stuff, like the like feeling, like all that stuff. So, like, what do you say to people that are like, it's too late? Like, I've already done the thing. Like, I can't switch now. Like, there's so much of that limiting belief out, mindset out there. Like, so how do you, like, how was your way into getting over that, whatever that was for you, of the momentum that you like, where we feel
Yeah.
like we have to just keep riding the storm?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think first off, it takes a lot of courage. It really does. And it's scary, this process, right? But all wonderful things, it's a process, and it's, you go through something and you become so much better, right? As a result of going through it. And I think those are the things that are truly worth doing and going through, right? Like I really think everything is a lesson, right? We're here to learn and to grow and to expand into the best version of ourselves. And I think for me, it was a process, and it's an ongoing process of unfolding. And I think it's really important to have support and community, but also being mindful that it may not be in the traditional sense of like your family and friends, right? I think for me, what helped was really working with different coaches and healers, because they really held the space for me to be open to explore. They were non-judgmental. They gave me this playground almost to be curious and to see what else it could be, right? And I think a big part of it is starting with compassion, really, and offering that self-compassion to yourself, because a lot of times we have so much judgment of ourselves. And that all that does is it keeps us stuck, right? It keeps us tied to a certain identity and expectations, and we're so attached to it. And a lot of times when people, when I see clients, when I talk to people and they're at this phase where they're not sure if they're ready to move forward and change, I think it's about just being really first paying attention to what is, right? Because it has to really be a struggle, I think, a lot of times, in order for you to actually want to do something about it, right? Because we're by human nature, we prefer for things to be easy and comfortable, and because that's how we feel safe, right? And supported. And so I think that, you know, it has to actually be really uncomfortable and painful, and for you to probably be willing to take this step to look at what's going on. And then it takes a lot of compassion, right? To be open to another possibility, and then really having that space and container to explore. And I think this idea that, it's too late, right? I can't change. That comes up all the time, right? And once you recognize that thoughts are just words in your brain, right? And that you don't actually have to believe everything you think, it just opens up this whole new possibility, right? It's like you can actually intentionally choose the thoughts that serve you, the thoughts that you want to believe, and just practice until it becomes your reality. And that really is the whole process, right? It's learning to look at what thoughts and beliefs you're holding on to right now, a lot of which may have been given to you, right? Kind of passed down from generations or cultures, media, friends, other external things, right? And I think the work is really being able to look at yourself and look within, and being open and honest with what actually feels good to you, and giving yourself permission to do that.
And I'm curious, do you remember if there was like the straw or the tipping point where you were like, because I know you mentioned like it was a coach that really helped you just unleash what was really in your heart. So I'm wondering if it was like one more conversation with one more patient that was just driving you know what I mean, like what, like, because I think sometimes too, like, people feel like it looks a certain way when you get that aha moment to make that one new decision, whether that one new decision is to just schedule a thing with a coach, or that one new decision to say no to this thing. So I'm wondering if there was that for you, where it just all came to that head, and you can kind of pinpoint.
I think there were several instances that contributed to this. One of which was definitely when I got sick and I got diagnosed with an autoimmune condition that impacted my eyes, and it could have led to full vision loss.
Oh, wow.
And I remember sitting in the doctor's office, being a patient, and just all the emotions of just everything when I received the diagnosis. And I mean, I'm grateful because of my medical training and background, and then we started treatment and all the things. And but I think, and it was interesting because after that journey, as I started my health journey, and I started working with different healers and a coach, and she was saying that, isn't it interesting, the metaphor of how, you don't want to see the reality of your life right now. And I was like, okay, there's, I can get behind that. Yeah. And I think that, so, um, I say it because everyone's journey unfolds a little bit differently. And I think that for some people, it may be this really drastic, maybe a health diagnosis like cancer and all these things where they're just forced to stop, right? For others, it might just be more of like a slow burn and just finally one day, like maybe their partner just doesn't take out the trash and then they're like, I can't. This needs, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I think it just depends on
Yeah.
where you are. But I do think that we are consistently receiving messages and whispers. It's just whether or not we choose to listen and do something about it.
So I'm excited because I feel like, oh, I want to get into this. Like, I come from business, very analytical, right? Like, very masculine, like, way of doing things. And and there's this whole other effing world out there, like this whole other way to do things, a whole other way to be, other than like a slave to your to-do list and stuff. And I'm kind of paralleling that, right, to Western medicine, right? And and how you have come to see yourself as a healer, and how that like means inclusion of many different things for you. So like I'm curious your journey in even just that, right? Which is, were both of these things indoctrinated into you, like Western and Eastern, and did it just kind of come to the unfolding, or was it like did it happen later on in your exploration to say, oh, there's actually like a whole nother way to look at this word healing and health and wellness?
Yeah, I would say it probably unfolded later on in my journey. And it's interesting because I grew up in Taiwan. And so Chinese medicine is very popular there, right? Herbs, acupuncture, all the things. But when I was living in Taiwan, I actually never saw a Chinese medicine doctor. I never took herbs. I never did any of those things, never tried acupuncture. And then because I was so focused on Western medicine and thinking that that was the way, right? And then I came to the States, started school, went to med school, and I think I'm grateful that I went to Dartmouth and I was able to really get a more holistic picture. There were faculty who believed in taking a more integrative approach. And I was introduced to mindfulness there, and really started to explore and be open to these things. And I think as I continued on the journey, I recognized that Western medicine is very oftentimes focused on sick care. And there's definitely a time and place. I mean, if you have an infection, like, please go take an antibiotic, right?
Right. Let's not let that fester.
Yeah. But but I think that there's also this whole other side of healing where it's about looking at the whole picture. It's looking at the root cause. It's understanding and putting the patient at the center of their care, right? And I think that it's unfortunate that as doctors, we sometimes do a disservice to patients when we don't really bring about that aspect of healing, right? When we're so focused on just looking for the quick fix and not bring a solution, a permanent solution. And so I think that it was just throughout my journey, learning more about it, and also in my own health journey, right? Recognizing that I didn't want to be taking a medication my whole life. I didn't, and also if you really look at the information sheet on any medication, you're essentially oftentimes trading one thing for another. And I think that that's always something that's at the back of my mind when when I'm prescribing something. I always like to go over all the details. I wanted people to feel like they know what, they're making an informed decision. And knowing that there are so many other ways to feel better, right? Like diet, lifestyle, like a lot of times it's very simple. And I think sometimes people want, especially now with all of the tech and everything, it's like they want the fanciest gadget and to tell you like, how much you're sleeping and all these different things, right?
I'm like, I don't want to know how much I'm sleeping. That is not going to help me.
I mean, just, whereas, or you could just like, first thing when you open your eyes, just like do a quick like body scan and just check in, like, how are you feeling? Like, do you have energy? Like, like simple things like that, right? And I think that, it's about finding that balance that works for you. And what I just love and appreciate about integrative medicine, functional medicine, and just all these other holistic healing methods is that there's so many great things that work. And I think that people, unfortunately, may not necessarily know about them because it's not as mainstream. Mm-hmm. But I think it's really important to be aware and also not give up, right? I think it's the hardest thing as a patient where when you see a doctor and maybe you receive a diagnosis and the doctor's like, well, I don't know what to do. Or like, this is your reality. Like that sucks, and also for me, just having been on the, being on the patient side, like I don't think that's helpful for anyone, right? And doctors don't want to say that too, right? Like, but it's just, I think there's so much power in having that sense of hope and belief and knowing that you really can heal and that there's a way out there for you.
Mm-hmm. And I am curious because we're, even bringing it back to deconditioning, right? Because even this way of thinking is still not the norm in this country, right? Like, so when you started to develop your philosophy, your personal philosophy about what it looks like to put the patient at the center and to use a whole bunch of other tools in your toolbox other than the scalpel, pardon the metaphor, but like, did you hit resistance to that, whether it was the medical community or your family or the people that you care about? And what was that journey like to just stand in your truth about what you felt was really in honor of the human in all of us in the healing?
Yeah, I think that it was important for me to remember and continuously remind myself that everyone is entitled to their own opinions and they have their own beliefs and values. And knowing that I'm not here for everyone, right? None of us are.
Yes. Can we just amplify that? I am not here for everyone. Like, if you take nothing away, please. Sorry, I had to emphasize that.
Yeah, and I think that you'll find your people, your community, and people who are similar to, with the same philosophy, approach, and all these things. And it's so important to have that tribe, right? Because we are, as humans, social creatures. And it's really important to have that community and support. I think that being said, it's of course, I don't think anyone wants to just, it's never easy when somebody like points fingers or like hates on you and all these things, right? But I think that when you can remember and stay grounded in who you are and your why, and be just so certain that, and just believe in what you're doing so strongly, right? Like that this is something that I really see as the future of medicine, taking an integrative approach, right? Because we something needs to change. I mean, Western medicine with all the sick care, like we as a country are spending probably like the highest amounts on healthcare dollars while we have like the lowest life expectancies among developed countries. And that's not acceptable. And it's really unfortunate. And I think that, that's a whole nother discussion, but just, I
Next
think that
time
there,
on Talk About It Tuesday, the healthcare debacle. Yeah.
but I think that there's always, everyone's going to always have their own opinions, just as we do too, right? Like I have my own thoughts and that's okay. And I think it's just knowing that, when you actually can stand for something and be who you really are, that is really, really powerful.
Well, and I think in what you just shared, right, this idea of really being grounded in yourself and really understanding your why and rooting in that, because like you said, everybody and their brother is gonna have something to say about how you doing and what you're doing and all of that. And it's another thing to actually feel like you like you're not wrong by standing in whatever it is, even if it's the only one, you're the only one with that particular stance.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And that's why
and
I always talk about bring it back to self-compassion,
mm,
right? Because life is going to have its ups and downs, right? And it's more important to know what to do when you're in challenging situations, like how to pick yourself back up, building that skill of resilience so that you can keep going, right? And I think that so often because the brain has this negativity bias, that when we have a thought like, oh, they don't like me, or I said the wrong thing, right? What happens is the brain keeps spinning in negativity. And then it's like one thing leads to another, to another. And then before you know it, you're like spending hours ruminating, right? Over like, oh, I shouldn't have said this. I shouldn't have worn that. Like all of these things, you're like wasting so much time on this, right? I mean, it happens to everyone. It happens to me, right? And so it's just about being able to really be your own best friend, right? So that you really have your own back and can take care of yourself no matter what. I think that's one of the best skills that anyone can develop.
yeah, and right, like self-compassion and non-judgment, like right, that's like a whole topic in and of itself. And I'm curious because I'd love to dig into this a little bit more because it's one of those you can scroll through Instagram and see all these things and it's like it's just the surface, right? And I am pulled to also put this in juxtaposition to something you said in our pre-call, which was that relationships are mirrors.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why I'm putting these two thoughts together, but I would love to get your thoughts on like how do you even start to build compassion for yourself and non-judgment, and also what is the role of the people around you in that journey in your opinion, like
Mm-hmm.
because yeah, it's not easy,
It definitely isn't easy, yes. And I think that when I talk about self-compassion, I always like to bring in Kristen Neff's work. And she has a great book called Self-Compassion that I highly recommend to anyone who's interested. She also has a TED Talk if you want like the abbreviated version. So basically, the three components of self-compassion are mindfulness, or being present and noticing. The second component is common humanity. So recognizing that we are all human and this happens to all of us, right? And three is self-kindness, or offering yourself that sense of kindness. And I think that it is like anything else. It's a process and a practice. And I think a lot of times when we get attached to the timeline, for example, oh, I should know this by now, right? It's like, I should have made this amount of money. I should have been, gotten married, or like all of these things, right? When you're really attached to how things are supposed to look, a lot of times that brings about more suffering because life is not going to go our way all the time, right? And a lot of times it's because there's something even better that's waiting to happen. And when we're so attached to how it's supposed to look, we can't even see all the beauty and wonder, right? So I think that bring it back to the question about relationships and how relationships can be a mirror. I've noticed that for me, as I've done more of this work in terms of bringing more self-compassion, I have actually developed a stronger sense of compassion for others as well. And I think it's because a lot of times we can be judgmental to others, but it's actually more a projection, that like you're judging something about yourself, and then, you don't want others to see it. And so you judge them instead first, right? So I think that I've definitely noticed that relationships, in my life have evolved, and they really serve as a mirror for me in terms of how my relationship is with myself, right? There are people who maybe, I don't know, I think sometimes people may feel like, oh, why does this always happen to me? Right. And all these things. And they kind of hold that belief with them. And then, they might attract a lot of their friends, might also kind of all be in that similar headspace and all the things. And then you notice that you realize that once you actually start looking at it and doing the work and understanding and changing your beliefs and mindsets, a lot of these people, these relationships actually fall away, right? Because it's just no longer a match for you. You don't have space for that in your life, right? And so I think that relationships can be a very powerful way to really reflect back your relationship with yourself, and in all aspects. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I love this. Like this whole concept alone of like when we're judging others, or in envy or resentment, or some of these parallel feelings, that it is such a great piece of information to say, how am I seeing myself, or how am I feeling about myself? And that's a way more constructive thing to do than to speak your judgment and therefore project. Um, so in the work that you do, I'm wondering if you hit like challenges with even knowing like what's the right approach here, right? Because it's like, well, there's still a lot of options, right, in terms of moving forward, whether it's self forward or others forward in the journey, right? Well, it's like you can choose your own adventure. So I'm wondering if you ever hit a challenge with all these different philosophies, approaches to actual like client care, patient care, and then the other thing I want to also say to those who are on live, if you have any questions, by all means, like please feel free to put them in the chat with Cindy, because she's it's amazingly valuable. So take advantage if you want. But yeah, I just love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I think that there's always going to be challenges and lessons to be learned. That's really my approach. I think I see it all as opportunities. And I really reframed like it's not a problem, but it's an opportunity for a solution, right? And to move forward. And really adopting that growth mindset and being open and expansive. I think for me, it's really important to meet people where they're at. And I think fundamentally as humans, we all just want to be seen, heard, and understood. And when you can provide that space for someone, when they feel safe, so many things unlock, and so much magic can happen. I think a lot of times, whether it's anger issues, all these things, they're very surface level, and they oftentimes stem from as protective mechanisms. And I think when you're able to really get to the deeper levels, again, bring that sense of compassion and safety and openness, I think that you can really connect and understand, like, hey, are they, what is going to be most helpful to them at this point, right? Because that's what I love about coaching one-on-one, is because you have this very customized experience, right? It's very personalized because it's not cookie cutter, right? Like, we all have different life experiences, events, circumstances, and we need to take that into consideration. And some people may be more willing to talk about their past traumas. Some people maybe not, maybe never, right? So it just depends on where you are. And I think that what I'm grateful for is that I've gotten so much training experience to really have this very, very well-stocked toolkit with a lot of skills and tools that I can share with my clients, with my team and people, so that they can feel better.
I love that because there's so many parallels to what you're saying in terms of it's like revolutionary. The work that I do in corporate cultures, right, which is to help people feel seen and heard and valued, and the same in your world of healing and medical, however you kind of define the box that you play in. But at the end of the day, it's whether wherever we're in service and whatever our industry, how can we see the person across from us from being knowing and wise and honoring what they know about their journey and what's best for them, is kind of what I'm hearing you say, right? It's
Yeah.
like, and I think people, whether they're stuck because they're having challenges in their career, or they're stuck in their health journey, they still have a lot of inner knowledge inside, and I don't think that that's really honored in the Western like medicine practices, and which is to me the chasm that you're trying to cross. That's how I'm seeing
Yeah.
it. I don't know if that resonates for you, but
Yeah, and I think I always like to say that, to remind people that you're trying your best right now. And what happened in the past, you were trying your best at that point in time, based on what you had, the resources, the knowledge that you had at that point, right? Because a lot of times I think we judge ourselves feeling like, it wasn't good enough or XYZ. And again, bring that sense of compassion and that permission to decondition, right? It's like, you know, it happened, it's in the past, you tried your best, it's okay, right? Like, there, the reason it happened was for, you were so that you could learn XYZ. And instead of staying stuck in that place of shame and guilt and all of these things, right? Which is never really productive, because then we can't change our past. So I think it is really important to really remember that, whatever you're doing, like, you are trying your best. And knowing that, I think there's also this idea that we feel like our best is, maybe a 10 or perfection, right? But it's actually not, right? Because we feel differently every day, right? Our energy level is not always at the highest. And so your best on a day when you're not feeling that well is different from your best when you're feeling amazing, right? When you've had like 9 hours of sleep and like all the things, right? So knowing that too, I think is really important to kind of level set too.
yeah. So I love that. To know that it's fluid. It's not
Mm-hmm.
static. It
Mm-hmm.
changes. Um, so I so a couple things, like, as we're coming to the top of the hour, is, well, first of all, I'd love for the audience to learn more about how you serve your practice, how they can get in touch with you if they're feeling the vibe. And also, we've kind of gone around and covered a lot as it relates to this permission to decondition. And I just want to ask, like, the open-ended, like, is there something that we haven't touched on that you feel like you really want the audience to know about deconditioning and giving yourself permission to do that?
I'm trying to think. I mean, I feel like there's so many things that I can share.
I know.
I think that it's really this idea of identity, and when you're thinking about, we just started our new year, and a lot of times people set goals and intentions. They have, just they like being very hopeful, right, about all the things that can come in 2022. And I think it's important to remember that who you are now, right, is a result of your past. Your beliefs, all the things brought you to this point. And if you're looking to create certain things, new things, projects, clients, whatever, revenue, success, it's oftentimes going to take a slightly different version of you, right? Because you're going to need to show up differently. You might need to have different practices and habits, do certain, different things. And so you have to become and evolve into this new version of yourself. It doesn't mean you're not you. It's this next level of you. And so I think that in order to make that shift and transition, you do need to give yourself permission to let go, to decondition, to also forgive yourself, so that you can clear space and move forward. So I think it's a process. I've mentioned throughout the talk today that it's a practice and a process, and every little bit counts. So never underestimate what you're doing, and really celebrate every moment.
I love that. Thank you. That's why I love the open-ended, because like I love like the thumbprint that you wanted to leave on that, and especially like just not underestimating that every step that you're taking is part of the journey of where you want to get to. And sometimes we forget that, especially because, like you said earlier, we're not in control of the timeline. Like the results, are not going to be according to our calendar plan. Yeah, such good, just counsel, and especially, because you've been through it. You've been through the journey
I have.
over and over again, I'm sure. And as you shared, so how do you serve? Like, what do you do now in terms of, the kinds of clients that you take on? I know you're on the West Coast, but who are you passionate about serving?
Yeah, so I serve in two main ways. I do offer one-on-one coaching, and I also offer speaking engagements. And through coaching, I really provide a 3-month container for clients to go through this process, to learn valuable tools and skills to quiet their inner critic, to learn how to really make that mind-body connection and get out of that survival mode and into a thriving mode instead. Because that's when you can access all of your wisdom and potential, right? When you're more calm and relaxed and grounded. And so that has been really, really gratifying to be able to help clients learn the tools to feel better and manage their minds, and without having to take medications. And it's something that they have with them for life. They have this toolkit that they can consistently go back to. So that's been really, really rewarding to be able to serve in that way. Yeah. And then the other way is through speaking, and I do different corporate trainings, workshops, keynotes, things like that, just to bring this message to the masses. I think for me, I wanted to transition into entrepreneurship and speaking so that I could make a bigger impact and to share this message, to bring mindfulness to the world so that people know that they don't have to struggle. There is an easier way. You can be successful with ease and joy, right? It's not just hustling and like overworking and getting burnt out and all the things. So, yeah.
Yeah, coming from, someone who did it the other way for a long time.
Yes, yes.
Yes, present company included. I love that. Yeah, and the message definitely needs to be shared that how, society tells us we are supposed to be, how we're supposed to do things, what we're supposed to do. It's, it all needs to be reconsidered and rethought about actually what is the best way for you. And like you said, ease and joy is accessible and available. What a great way to end January. It's been a rough January, right? We came into it with the fire, with the surging of COVID and all that stuff, and I think a lot of energy from 2021. So this is great. To send this message, thank you so much. That there is another way, that you can find your joy regardless of however many years you've been doing something that's not bringing you joy. It's never too late to shift. So thank you for sharing your story, your journey, your wisdom, your guidance, advice to this community. And I'm wishing you all the big stages so that your message can get out there. I really consider you like a credible messenger, right? Because the world of, I'm going to get it wrong, right brain, right? Analytical brain, right? Needs to hear from someone who understands that way of thinking, how there is other possibilities out there, to decondition. So I just wish you all the best as you continue to grow your practice.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Yes, I invite everyone to follow me on Instagram at Cindy Tsai MD or visit my website, cindysaimd.com. I offer a free strategy call to anyone who's interested, and also just pick up my free guide to learn how to create your own calm.
Ooh, yes. All right, on that, putting that on my to-do list. I do have one of those too, by the way. All right, well, thank you for your time, and look forward to continuing to be in your orbit as a fellow coach and healer, and I look forward to ushering in February.
You got this. Thank you so much. Take good care.
Thanks, you
Bye.
too, Cindy. Thanks for everyone joining live and after the fact. Ciao for now.